Okay, so we've now done the basic stitches of the single crochet and the half double crochet, and today we're going to do the double crochet. And this is the first stitch that you'll notice so far that we've done that vastly changes the height from what the single crochet looks like. With the half double crochet, they're about similar in height, and I mean, even looking at them side by side, they're pretty similar. With the double crochet, on the other hand, you're going to be able to immediately notice the huge, vast difference here. But it's not that hard to do, but much like I already talked about in the single crochet video, there is a difference between the US and UK terms for double crochet versus single crochet. The term that we know for the US single, or not single, sorry, I'm confusing you, but the US term of double crochet means the same thing as the UK's triple or treble crochet. I don't know why they feel the need to step everything up one, but they do. And there's a difference, and it's something to watch out for, because, yeah, otherwise you could very easily do a lot of work for nothing and have to rip it all out, and that would suck. So, okay. We've got our initial chain here, as usual, and, instead of skipping 2 like you did for the half double crochet, you skip 3, and you go into the 4th stitch on your chain. So always add 3 more chains than you need for double crochet. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4. This is the one you're going to go into right here. But keep in mind that you have to yarn over. You can't just go into it, you have to yarn over first. So 1, 2, 3, okay, the 4th one, right here, go right on in. And it's similar to the half double crochet, but there's an extra step in there. So you yarn over, and you pull through the first loop. Okay, you've now got 3 loops on your hook. You're going to yarn over again, and go through the first 2 loops. Then yarn over again and go through the last 2 loops. And that's how you do the double crochet stitch. So I'll do a row here and show you how you go up. And I'm actually going to do several rows because I'm going to show you the difference of when you count your chain 3 as a stitch versus not counting it as a stitch, because it's mostly for aesthetic reasons. But it's really your own call if the pattern doesn't call for one version specifically. You'll know what it looks like, and you'll be able to go into it knowing what you're doing and which look you'd rather go for. Because it does vastly change your edges, I have to admit. So, go into the stitch. Again, it's always harder on the first row. Okay, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, through the first 2 loops, yarn over, through the second 2 loops. Do it again. And through the stitch. It's giving me a little bit of trouble here. Okay. Go through, got your 3 stitches, go through 2, go through 2. Just 2 at a time and you're good. That's the basic thing to remember with double crocheting, is that you just go through the 2 at a time. Go through the stitch. It's not liking me today. Okay, up through the initial stitch, then 2 and 2. See, we're already halfway done, but it does speed up, as you're gonna see. I can actually do this pretty fast once we're past the initial row. Okay, in through the stitch. Through. Oops, didn't get it all the way through there. Okay. Yarn over. In through the stitch, pull it through, 2 loops and 2 loops. in through the stitch, through the first one, 2 and 2. It's a little bit tricky when you're first getting used to it, especially the yarn over part, because when you're first starting out, I can pretty much guarantee you are going to drop that piece of yarn off your hook about 1,000,000 times while you're trying to master this stitch. And you're going to get very frustrated and want to give up, but don't give up. Just keep doing it, because once you commit it to muscle memory, it's pretty much there for life, and then you're good to go. And it becomes so much easier once you've got it all figured out. Okay, so I've got, how many stitches so far? I haven't been counting. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Okay. I think. I'm not sure. That's probably bad that I'm the one doing the tutorial, but yeah, okay, we don't count this on the initial row, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Alright, I see where I go next. See, it does get a little tricky sometimes, but not to worry. It can always be figured out through math, which I never thought I'd be the one saying, but I am, so there you go. Okay. Oh, I didn't go through it. See, this is what I mean by it being tricky while you're getting used to it. Even for somebody who's got quite a bit of experience doing it, it can be tricky on that first darn row, and I really don't like doing the first row. Okay. There. Got it, okay. Through 2, through 2. Yarn over. We're down to the last 2 stitches now, so in through the stitch, up through the original stitch, do 2, do 2, oops, okay, last one, and through there, all the way, okay, go through 2 and through 2. Now, because this is a double crochet, you have to chain 3, so 1, 2, 3, turn it around. Now, this, okay, you can already see that it's taller than a regular single crochet, I'm sure. But anyway, this is where it starts to get tricky, because most patterns, if you're doing double crochets, it will say if your first stitch on the next row is going to count as a stitch or not count as a stitch. And right now I'm going to show you what difference it makes if you don't. So if this right here, this first chain 3, does not count as a stitch, you're going to go into this stitch right here, the first immediate one. If it does count as a stitch, however, you're going to go into this one right here. But for the first example that I give, I'll count it as not a stitch. So just go right across here, and I'll do a couple rows this way, and then I'll do a couple rows that way and show you guys what it looks like, because it's just a matter of personal preference if it's not specified in your pattern, and you're bound to like one way better than the other. One has neater edges, but it has holes in it. The other one has no holes in it, but the edges are bumpy. So it really depends what you think of it. See, it goes pretty quickly once you know what you're doing. Oops. And it's always a good idea to double check the number of stitches you've got at the end of your row. You just have to keep in mind if that first stitch, if you're counting that as a stitch or not, so you don't throw off your count, because you'll either gain one or lose one if you do it wrong, but always a good thing to know depending on which version of this that you're doing. Okay. and then you do your chain 3. See how quickly it works up when you're doing double crochets? It's so much faster than single crochets. But, sorry, my yarn's getting stuck here. Okay. Doing another row where we are not counting that chain 3 as a stitch. It'll probably take you a while before you become quick at double crocheting like this, but the more you do it, the faster you get. For me, what really made it click was I made a beach mat where I had to cast on, or I guess chain, about 200 odd something stitches, and it was all in double crochet. So, needless to say, very quickly I got much faster at it, because I hadn't even double crocheted yet before that project, so yeah, you learn quickly when you're doing a project and you're really hell-bent on getting it done quickly, so, because I wanted it done before the summer was over. Still took me about 3 months to make the thing, but that's beside the point. It was only my second ever crochet project, so it's allowed. It's to be expected. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Okay, perfect. Chain 3. I'll do a couple more where we are not counting that first stitch as a stitch, but you can already see how the edges are beginning to do this sort of S-type shape, right? Goes in and out, and over here it's all wavy. Yeah, it's going to be more prominent the more rows of it there are, so I'm going to do 4 rows. So I've got 2 already. I'm going to do 2 more, and I'm going to do 4 where it does count as the first stitch. So hang with me, it'll make sense, and you will see and be able to draw your own conclusions on what you prefer. Both are good, both work, it really just matters on what you think of it. And even if you choose the one with the wavy sides like this, you can even those up if you go around the outer edges with like a single crochet or something, and you just do a border around the perimeter of it. Suddenly everything all lines up, and then it's perfect and nice and neat. So there's ways around everything, and actually I prefer it that way because once it has that border, you can't even tell that it was wavy once, so. Okay. Almost done with this row. The chain 3. Make sure we've still got the same number of stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Okay. One more, and then we change. Although obviously, when you're doing your project, you're going to pick one style or the other and stick with it unless otherwise noted, because your work's going to look really weird if you switch back and forth between these two methods. You don't want to do that. It's best just to pick one. But you can do anything you want. If you want it to be all mismatched and kind of crazy for whatever look that you're going for, I suppose you could do that. I'm sure there's projects where it does look right, I just haven't personally seen them, but I'm also still somewhat new on the crochet scene myself, so I'm sure there's plenty of things I haven't seen yet. Almost done. Last couple here. Whoops. Redo that one. Two, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay. Chain 3. Now. Right now you can definitely see just how even these edges are. This cannot be denied no matter which way you look at it. Put that back in there. Now we're going to count this first one as a stitch, But when you come to the end of it, there's a caveat to this for it looking neater. It's going to be a little bit trickier when you get to the ends, and I'm going to show you why. Okay, so skip that first stitch, go into the next one. See, I'm sure you can already see how this edge just on that one is starting to look more even than the ones before it, but it becomes more prominent the more you do of it. So, like I said, I'm going to do 4 rows of this too because I did 4 of the first one just for comparison's sake. So you can really see what this difference is. Now see, if we were counting, or if we weren't counting it as a stitch, you would be done right here. But we only have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Yeah. You need one more to even this out, don't we? Yeah. So, with that in mind, wait. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay. Maybe I'm wrong. I thought we were supposed to do this last little thing over here. Well, let me show you what I'm talking about anyway. I will figure this out. There is a little stitch in the end of it right here that if you're trying to keep the same number equal all throughout, you'll notice that even with your chain on row, you have 13 even though you're only working 12 stitches because 1 is the part on the end that you bring up. So to keep it in tune with this, you have to work that one on the end, which is a tricky little one to get into, let me tell you. And it's easily forgotten because it's on the end. So, it takes some working to get it through it and get it just through the right part of that stitch there, but with a little work you can get it. There, got it. Okay, then work up, chain 3. And then you skip your first stitch, go in here, go across. Just work right across it. No big deal. Okay, come to the end where you have to find that little end stitch, which is basically the top of the chain 3 from that side. So if you can remember where that is, awesome. Otherwise it takes some learning to figure out which part you're going into, but it should be level with the bottom of the stitches you've just worked and look like a little V from the side of the row when you go to work it. There we are, chain 3. Now see, even just with 2 rows, you see how much neater those edges look, right? But you've got a big gaping hole over here and over here. So, I mean, it's something to keep in mind, but it's a matter of personal preference of which you like more and which flaw bothers you less, I guess. But, yeah, I'll do a couple of more rows so you can see what extended stretch of this looks like. I realize this is becoming quite the epic little video here. But we're almost done. But the double crochet in general is a good stitch, even with its flaws on the edges, because it's taller to where it can help you work up projects much more quickly, and just, it's easy to do once you figure out what you're doing. You cover more ground quicker, you don't need as much yarn to cover said ground. So... and it's a little warmer than if you use the treble stitch because there's bigger gaps in between each stitch with that, obviously enough. Okay, we've reached our edge stitch. Yarn over and we go right in here again. You have to get it through both legs of the stitch because otherwise you're left with a little ridge that sticks out like a sore thumb. Which I also learned the hard way when I was first learning how to do this. And chain 3. One more row and we will wrap this up. Because this is getting lengthy, I know. And if you've hung with me thus far, you are amazing, and you should definitely subscribe to my channel if you're listening to it. Because this is just basics right now. I'll be able to show you some really cool stuff if you hang around long enough. Because there are such epic different stitches that I'm going to show you guys once we get there. But I'm just going in order of difficulty, basically. So do the basic ones first, and then we'll move on to more advanced things. Oops, there's hair back here. It's bothering me. Okay. Finishing this up. Yeah, I wouldn't suggest using a double crochet stitch if you're doing something like amigurumi because there's big old gaps in this where your stuffing's just gonna fall out if you use it for that, so that's better kept to single crochet, but for bigger things like afghans, this is an amazing stitch to use. Because it'll help you work over big spaces far more quickly than if you try and do it in single crochet. Okay, last stitch. Ta-da! Okay, I'm gonna just take my hook out because I wouldn't recommend doing this otherwise, but since this is just an example swatch, it doesn't really matter. Alright, so you can very much tell the difference between the top 3, or the top 4 and the bottom 4. Bottom 4, top 4. Yeah. I mean, even if you, like, give it a little tug, it evens it up a little bit, but it can only be helped so much. But see, there's these big old holes in the sides of it. Over here and over here, so... I mean, I suppose if you utilized this correctly, those could even work as buttonholes. I mean, they could work to your advantage, I suppose, but, just on their own, personally, they're like a little pet peeve of mine. I just go with the bottom 4 and doing a border around them, either in the same color or a contrast color, it doesn't really matter, but it depends on your project and what will work better for it, so... And if it specifies how you're supposed to do it in your pattern, that's the main thing you want to pay attention to. So, it's only a matter of personal preference if it doesn't tell you what you need to do. But, anyway, yeah, that is the double crochet stitch and how you do it both ways.